Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And today we should be able to finish this writing a fat character reaction. So let's go ahead and get into it. I don't have much to say other than I'm at my new maintenance cows as of today. So any anhedonia I'm having, it should peak at this point and it should start to be okay, probably within a couple weeks. So yeah, it was a tough week this week, just in terms of work and stuff, but I feel good about myself because I kept everything going. So we're going to go ahead and get started now.
I'm really smart. You guys. Is that kind
Like
of what you're getting
that
at a little bit with that?
that's
Or
that's good and I would
yeah.
approve of that. But what I really want
Hmm.
is a fat academic woman who is smart and competent,
Okay,
who isn't
I remember this.
Yeah.
dismissed. Someone who's just allowed to be fat among the adjectives.
Hmm.
Like maybe it comes up, maybe it doesn't.
I think the fear is that if we focus too much on the challenges being faced, it risks the possibility of being turned into a kind of torture porn, further reinforcing the idea that being fat is miserable. That was frankly my biggest issue with The Whale, and I'm not the only one who thinks
Well,
so.
Aronofsky may think
the whale was about that whole type of thing. Again, I think didn't Aronofsky do Requiem for a Dream? I just watched that. That's kind of his style. Didn't he also do Black Swan too? Or did I get that wrong too? Like he likes stories that have to do with, if I'm correct, if I'm totally wrong. Hold on, let me pause. I want to make sure I'm not wrong. Yeah, I just made sure. I'm right. I'm right. So he likes those kind of like obsessive, dark stories of like people's lives falling apart. He likes that kind of style, which I really am a fan of Requiem for a Dream. I really like that one probably the most, but it's just kind of classic. But again, I understand where the whale came from. I think it was more of an issue of the source material, like just saying it didn't transition to film as great or transfer to film as great. I think that Requiem for a Dream was great. It came from a book. I don't know where Black Swan came from, but the point is, that's just his style. It's not really a fatness thing necessarily. He might have some kind of interest in, you know, adjacent toxic ritualistic topics, because there's a lot of that obsessive quality, like I think about Black Swan. Um, he likes that kind of thing. I almost wonder if somebody in his life had it, which by the toxic ritualistic, I mean E fall by letter D. I have to use a coded language for YouTube, but I'll call it the TR or the toxic ritualistic, but it has to do with that. So he likes things that are kind of adjacent to that, or similar to it, which again, you could see with Requiem with the mom. She was downsizing using uppers, basically. So he just likes that kind of thing. I don't necessarily see it as like he just hates fat people, but I don't know. It's kind of like you should know what you're going to get, basically.
he's presenting some kind of radically cathartic journey throughout The Whale, but all he's doing is bringing a hollow sense of dignity to his schematic brand of cinematic misery porn.
For me, what feels comfortable in engaging with is going to depend very much on the day.
But they don't have any issue with how he depicted downsizing in Requiem. You know what I'm saying? It's like they always view it one way all the time. They never like can look at anything just as it is. It's always promoting obesity. They can't help it. Everything is promoting obesity. It's okay if it's a horror story, if it's the other way, but not if it's within obesity, then it's not okay. You see, it's so blatant and so obvious.
and the mood that I'm currently in. For example, in a horror film, I would sort of expect some of the unpleasantries of fat phobia to be discussed, though hopefully in a way that is criticizing anti-fat bias and not playing into them. See Carrie, for example.
Carrie White is supposed to be a fat girl. This is explicit in the text and a major component as to why she is being bullied. Why do you think they use pig's blood on her, huh? Make fat Carrie, you cowards.
On the other hand, if I'm watching more of a sci-fi epic, for example, I'm probably looking for more of an escape and don't necessarily want a scene where the main character's like trying to
You can watch Wall-E.
find a spacesuit that fits. Fat writers will ultimately have to make decisions about what's going to work best with whatever they're creating. If you are a straight-sized writer, then I guess my question for you would be, what are you hoping to achieve with the inclusion of this character? And also, make sure to have some fat sensitivity readers to look over your piece once it's done. That actually would make a pretty solid rule, come to think of it.
I'd like to see a character.
I would tread lightly on that. You have to make sure that the person's not within the TR, that they're not talking to bingo. Replace the O with an E. Make sure, because there's a lot of delulu in that. So I would say with that caveat, for sure.
Who's a lot like me, who is, sarcastic and, has joyful moments and emotional depth and, is strong, not necessarily in the physical sense, but can carry emotional arcs, and is funny, but, isn't, the funny friend. Just, I want to see a human being.
They don't know what they want. They just don't. I think what it is it's I think no matter what, they're going to have a problem. And I think that there's this idea that a zombie, I call them zombies, people within the issue, you have this idea that a zombie can be pleased. They can't. You have to let that go. That's part of what's inherent in the problem. That's what's inherent in all the problems, is this sort of insatiability, this unsatisfaction, this dissatisfaction, a chronic dissatisfaction with the self that can also be projected onto other people. So it can very easily go from I'm not good enough to you're not good enough to society's not good enough to everything's not good enough. Nothing's ever enough, right? There is that aspect. You have to remember there's a perfectionistic quality to all of the issues. So nothing will ever be perfect. Nothing will ever be within your control completely. Now, and by nothing, I mean nothing outside of you. That's what I'm trying to say. You do have control over your weight. You do have control over the behaviors involved in this issue. That's the one thing that people do have control over. That's why they do this. Because you're trying to get control over things that you can't. So you gotta stop. You have to accept the spontaneity of life. You have to accept that people and situations and families and governments and systems and everything are flawed. And they're always going to be flawed. It will never not be flawed. You will never not be flawed. So this idea that, well, I should just never try at all, like in bingo, or I should obsessively try within the reductive side, or again, when you're talking to Mia, it's kind of like you're going between the two all the time. It all has to do with this, I cannot handle that I'm not perfect. And it's a different reaction to that with each of them. So I'm going to try my hardest, I'm not going to try at all, or I'm going to go back and forth, basically. And you can easily put that onto other people, especially at severe levels. So my point is, do not try to please them. You will never please them. I need you to understand there's so many people, no, but no. You will never, ever please them. Society has never been more accepted Society in America has never been more accepting of obesity to the point where it's literally promoted constantly at this point. And it's still not enough. Obesity isn't even trending downward. It's just stagnated and they're freaking out. They're so unhappy. Everybody's skinny now because we're not skyrocketing anymore. Think about that standard. Why are you trying to please them? Why? You really have to question that. Like, if you do not have this problem, I need you to answer me. Why are you trying to please these people? They are mentally ill. They got issues. They externalize those issues. Why are you trying to please them?
I think there's a sweet spot. I think we can depict the realities and challenges of what fat people go through while also remembering to showcase their joy as well. Suffering for entertainment's sake is not very compelling story-wise, at least in my opinion. But, what do I know? There's like 30 Saw movies now. Also, it really is okay to use the word fat. You don't have to use words like curvy or voluptuous. Like, I get it. Sometimes we're trying to mix up word usage and we bring out the thesaurus. But it really is okay to use the word fat, I promise. You can be fat and happy, fat and victorious, fat and loved. Because those words aren't antonyms. They can and they do exist with each other. Probably a lot more often than you think. Well, it does appear to be half past Freckle, so our time together is nearly at an end. Let's wrap this class up.
This is like my dream ask, okay? Like, I saw the TV glow equally as queer, but like with just like a big old fat guy. When I saw that movie, like it very clearly has like its theme, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the entire time I was watching it, which was not the point of the film, was like, oh my God, this is what it's like being fat sometimes. Like you don't, I don't get to like just go to work. I don't get to like exist in a space with somebody. There's that one specific moment in the movie where like he's doing they're doing the montage of like growing up and everything, like narrating everything. And like I cried that entire time. It's resignation. It's saying like, you're right. I don't exist here. I'm not allowed to. I shouldn't. And you just make it work, And there's so much of that like the whole time I was watching that, and I've talked to a mutual friend a number of times like about this movie in particular, where it's just like this low grade, like mental, like TV static, where like that you're valid. There's no amount of anybody reaffirming that fact for you.
See, it's never enough.
It's just this internalized shame that you just are like, I guess this is what the fuck it is now.
So I would argue that has more to do with the TR than solely just being fat, because it would have to be like incessant bullying or something over the issue, which can happen, but then it's more of a bullying issue. It's like an incessant bullying issue, right? But if it's something that's just constantly running in your mind all the time, day and night, that's the TR commentary. And it isn't just a fat thing. It also happens within the reductive. It happens within talking to Mia. Like, it's the inner critic, the critic's voice. So I'm going to take that and rip that from your fat hands. And I'm going to put it to where it actually belongs, which is within the TR in general. It's the common thread to all of them. And it's a load of horseshit, regardless of what side of this you're coming on. I don't care if you're fat, skinny, or in between. It's dumb. The whole thing is stupid. But you get attached to it. And especially at severe levels, it's almost like you fall in love with it. And it's a very toxic thing. And leaving it at a severe level means falling out of love with it, which is really hard for a lot of people. It's a big ask, but it is the ask, babe. This is gonna fucking kill you. It will kill you. Is it really worth having that inner critic all the time? Is it worth it to die for it? Is it worth it to lose everything for it? And you have to ask yourself that question, because that's where you're headed, and that's where these people are. I think everybody in this video has the problem. She's more mild, but the rest of them, they're severe. So are they willing to die for it? Are you? Because that's where it goes. And I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, but being fat doesn't make you special. It doesn't. And that can be really hard for people to hear within bingo, because you want to feel like, I have this, I've been bearing the weight of this for so long. There has to be all this meaning to it. And it's like, there's likely a lot of things in your life that do have a lot of meaning. There's likely a lot of things in your life that have happened or that you have achieved or accomplished that are things you can identify with. But fatness is not really anything. It's the same thing with being thin. It's not really anything. It can have to do with how you look. You can look better or worse. That's true. But ultimately, looks eventually fade. Not that we shouldn't care about it at all. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a balanced perspective, but you have to understand, like, you can't base your entire identity in that. And even if you're doing it from a fat perspective, you still are doing that. And oftentimes people in bingo, they are so judgmental of thin people or people who are in shape. And they'll say things like, your whole identity is wrapped up in your abs or something like that. But it's like, their whole identity is wrapped up in their roles. It's just as superficial. It's just as stupid. And I think looking at a piece of media and just seeing it as this person fat, I fat too, this fat experience, it kind of cheapens what is actually a toxic ritualistic struggle, what is actually a deeper issue that is much more than skin deep, that usually has trauma roots. That would probably be a more compelling story and maybe a bit even educational if done well. But to consume that media and see it that way, it's very superficial. It's very shallow. And like, I remember when I watched Shallow Hal and I saw Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm pretty sure I'm getting the actress right. I'm not like the best with Hollywood and movies and stuff, but I feel like I'm doing okay. When she played Rosie, there were moments where she acted and she could really act that shame, even within the fat suit and everything. And I wouldn't be shocked if Gwyneth has her own issues and if she maybe tapped into that. But it shows that it isn't tied to your size. Which, why do people not like that to be brought out or shown? It's because it undermines the belief system of the toxic ritualistic. It undermines the body hierarchy. It undermines the dehumanization of people on the other side of the spectrum. There's dehumanization of fat people within the reductive. There's dehumanization of thin people within bingo. I don't know where Mia falls along with that, but y'all can let me know. But there's a lot of this type of stuff, but it's all fake. it's like cheap and fake, and all it is a mental illness. And it's 3 main ones, and they all reinforce each other. It's basically what it is. And that isn't very glamorous. It's not fun to say, but it is the reality. I try to point that out as much as I can. Like oftentimes, for example, when I have called out Instagram accounts promoting obesity or being short-sighted and only talking about the reductive and not looking at the other side of the spectrum at all, so therefore totally encouraging somebody within bingo, usually a fat person, typically a fat woman, will comment and try to attack my looks or my weight. And if they really believed, and then they'll say that I have a toxic ritualistic issue, if they really believed that, if they believe that the reductive is inherent to every single downsizing journey, and they know that I'm on one because they go to my profile and they see, and then they shame my looks or my weight, is that not in their mind reinforcing the reductive as a fat woman? Saying, they'll say, you shouldn't be able to say this unless if you look better. That's what they usually say. Not a man looking like this saying this about women. Not a man looking like that. Or they'll say that kind of thing. And then usually, even if a woman says it, they'll attack her looks too. It doesn't matter. It's not really a gendered thing. They'll try to frame it that way, but it's a superficial thing. And if they really believed what they said they do, then by their logic, they're reinforcing me to be reductive, which means that they don't care about you. And I think for a lot of people in the reductive, they are reinforced by people that are bigger. I think it goes all over the place. I really do. It's a very ugly system. Now, I'm not in it, so I don't give a fuck what somebody says about how I look, because I'm not superficial and vain and all that crap. I don't really give a shit. I don't. Like I said, for me, having a vanity era, it's like a balancing exercise because I don't give a fuck at all. I've said that many times. So it's like, let me try to care and see what happens. Let me try to balance myself out a bit. It's the equivalent of a gym bro like reading Shakespeare or something. I'm like the reverse, you know? I'm always up in my head. So it's like, let's try to look at the more physical side of life. Let's look at my body in like a healthy way rather than a busted bitch way. Let's fix the disconnection. You know, I do a lot of root chakra work, for example. That's a spiritual practice that keeps me and helps me get grounded into my body and to stay grounded, because I'm always thinking about ideas and activism and, you know, all this kind of stuff all the time. I'm sure you guys are shocked. So that's what it is. It's a balancing exercise for me, but I don't judge people really by that standard. And I certainly am looking at the ideas most of the time, and the ideas are crap. And the ideas are fake. And then they hate that I say that, and then they'll just attack how I look. Because it's based on a house of cards. And that's scary. But that's what I hear. I hear this person watching a scene of a montage of somebody growing up fat and so deeply identifying with it when there's nothing else other than fatness. That's a problem. That's a huge problem.
So we're going to figure it out, you know?
In today's class, we learned not only how to write a fat character, but why to write a fat character. We learned that representing the humanity and complexity of fat people doesn't just make for better stories, but more accurate ones. We discuss why fat suits are objectively terrible and why there should be more of an effort to cast fat actors into the roles that are more appropriate for their body size to play. We heard from real life fat people, educators, and creatives about their opinions on the matter.
Don't start with the character is fat. Start with them as a character and work out how they are affected by the world you have depicted. If you are going to use tropes in regards to eating or in regards to clumsiness or any of this kind of shit, make it a trait that is more defined and adds nuance to the character. I'm a bit more reticent to say you should never use humor in that regard.
Mhm.
But if you're going to, it should reinforce the character rather than be a cheap punchline for laughs.
That fat phobia is so ingrained in.
Like I said, I don't think that they're ever going to be pleased, but I do think that anything in a story, I will just say that, should be to reinforce characterization. Back when I was a writer, that was my strength, was characterization, which I'm sure you guys can see some of that in my activism. I have many characters and many. One of you guys said you want me to do a video explaining all of them. I probably will at some point, but it's been very fun to do that throughout the time, to have these characters kind of represent different aspects of downsizing or different aspects of the journey, so to speak. And I do think that when you are writing, I think that it should all reinforce characterization. And a lot of times, I mean, it depends. There's like world building types of storylines, and there's also more like human centered, where it's more about like the character change or the lack of a character change. Like I would say Antonovsky, oh my gosh, I'm so probably getting his name wrong. I feel so bad because I literally am not the best with Hollywood and all that. I probably said his name wrong. The one who did Requiem for a Dream and The Whale, he has very human centered movies that show a character not changing a lot of the time. And that not changing, it tends to be dark. And I even wrote a book like that once, and there was some humor in it at times. It was a book of short stories, but there was some humor in it, but it was always to reinforce the characterization. So it's like they say something crass or bad, but then they didn't change. And the whole thing was, it was sad. They were all sad stories because they never changed. None of them did. And I tried to do that because the first one I did, it was all about the characters changing. So the second one I did, it was about the world around them changing, but they stayed the same. And it made it kind of dark. But it's because in short stories, there's such a expectation for the main character to change. So I flipped that on its head. The point is, I care about characterization. So if you are a writer, please have strong characterization. It is very important, and I love characterization. So I agree. Anything in a story should be reinforcing it. I absolutely agree with that, if that's what he said, but I don't know.
In everybody, it's pressed upon us by everything around us. And I think taking that and saying, yeah, maybe an individual is a little childish or a little impulsive or a little bit lazy or whatever, likes to eat sweets. Who cares? And saying they're still worthy of love. It's okay to be a person. It's okay to be a whole person, even if you get stuck in an elevator.
You write them the same way you'd write any other character. You
I
write
agree with that.
them as a human being. You give them interests, you give them likes and dislikes, you give them a backstory, you give them emotional depth. It's like you try to make them as real as you can. That's what I do with all my characters. And that's what everybody should do with their characters, especially their fat characters.
Yeah, try and write from the inside, from a person having an experience, um, living in the world, instead of writing from the outside. Have an object to to interact with your other people. I think if you're writing about an experience, even if you're writing about an experience you do have, you got to try and unpack some of those. It's that terroir thing. You got to unpack what are the things that you have internally, and not even aware that you've imbibed that you're putting.
Well, I loved writing first person because, gosh, this is making me want to write again. My gosh, I literally, I'm like, you're not going to, Alex, what the fuck? Anyways, I used to love writing first person because it's all from that character's point of view. And I was so fascinated with being able to slant reality into what that person feels. Like I once wrote a story about this girl that was like super obsessed with this guy in the sense where like she wanted to know where they stood. Like she wanted to define the relationship basically. And they were all hiking. Like they were hiking with a group of friends and he was trying to lead the group of friends through the trail and he was getting lost and he wasn't being a very good leader. And she's like literally trying to define this relationship while they're in the middle of this. And I thought it was so funny to write because I've been crazy. I've been that crazy girly pop before, so I get that. Where it's like, I'm going to ask him the question. I want an answer now. And it's like they're in the middle of something and he's like, stop, and it's like, it's all written from her point of view. So it's like, well, he's just dodging my question. He's just this, he's just that. And it's like, she's not really paying attention to what's happening. But it was so fun to write it because it's like, as a writer, you look at that person's perspective, but you look at the other people's perspective too within first person writing. And then you look at what's happening around them. And that story was fun to write, but just because I want to tell you guys how it ended or whatever, what happened, the guy ended up getting hurt and she was the only one that knew what to do. So it was like her crazy, quote unquote, obsessive qualities. She knew exactly what to do, like when he broke his leg. And she told everybody in the group exactly what to do. She had a plan immediately and she like led them to to get help and everything. And he was fine. But I liked that story because it's like, it's all written from her point of view. And she's just like, and at the end, they're like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. Or like, you did such a great job. And she's like, yeah, whatever. So where do we stand? And it was just funny to me. I don't know. It was funny. And I don't even remember what I made him say. I forgot. But I think they probably ended up together in the end. But it was just like, it's so much fun. And I love unreliable narrators too. I love narrators that are like nuts or like delulu, or so they say things and you're like, And I did write a character that was fat and she was very insecure about everything, basically, that had to do with her weight. And so she was just kind of insecure about everything in general. And that one was in my second book, and it was how it was like she didn't change. So it's like her weight, the cycling, all of it, it didn't change. Because I did write about that too, where it's like she was trying to diet. It wasn't working. She was like freaking out. She didn't have any emotional regulation without her donuts or whatever it was. And so she freaked. And the tragedy of that story was like, she never changed, which that one was a more sad book. The other one was like a more happy one. But it's like, I like those characters because it's fun. And she was kind of like the fat character. She was bitchy about like her friend being gay. She's kind of bitchy towards him. And he had like a more of a reductive issue. And so they were kind of best friends. And it was just fun to write because she's like, you never struggled with this. And he's like, what do you mean? Of course I did. And she's like, you didn't. You know, it's just funny. It's funny to write stuff like that, you know? I like writing things from that, like, that's why I love first person, because it's just, it's fun. It's really fun. I love it. I love first person. They're going to make me write. I swear they're going to. They keep like tempting me with this, but it's like, I think if I wrote again, I'd want to do a novel because I never did that. And I don't know what the hell it would be about. I have an idea. I think I would do a gay one, honestly, if I did one. But that's a whole other thing. Anyways. God.
Into the character. And that's one of the reasons why sensitivity readers are important, because you will never see every issue. But having someone, you know, read what you've done and you know, show you where the issues that you didn't see are is important. And you know, you need to be open to criticism.
My glass half full sister.
Yeah, and that was the issue I had with writing. I wasn't. So I think for me, I struggled with criticism when I would write because it was really hard for me to do. When it came to YouTube, it's like I didn't, but it's because it was easier in a way. Or it's like I just liked it more, you know? But I've never written something out of the TR. You know, so it's kind of it's an interesting idea. So I wonder, because I wouldn't want my stories to be out there or anything, because they're kind of weird, because they were all kind of TR-ish, or like there's like a tint or like a hint of that in there, you know? But to write something stone cold sober, I don't know. Never tried that.
Even popped in when she thought I wasn't looking to discuss Fat Thor and why we need to remember that fat people.
I mean, stone cold sober as in out of the TR. I've never really been a drug and alcohol type.
Aren't a monolith. She is annoying, and I'll never forgive her for dragging me to that Taylor Swift concert, but she did make a good point. And perhaps most importantly of all, we discussed that fat is not a bad word. Will strict adherence to all of these rules guarantee non-problematic fat media representation? Maybe not. I'm sure there's something from this lesson plan that I forgot to cover, and if you think of something, write it down in a comment down below. I mean, my class review, this is a class. It's definitely a class. Hopefully, though, with these guidelines in mind, you can be more mindful and thoughtful about fat representation in media, television, movies alike going forward. Because if you sat through this whole lecture and came out the other side convinced that you didn't really learn anything new, that you knew all of this, implicit bias is a to unpack, taking literally years, if not decades, of active work.
Most of us are bad judges of our own biases. We may think of ourselves as egalitarian, clear-headed, justice-minded, compassionate, or we may think of ourselves as rational decision-makers who reliably treat other people with respect. To think of ourselves as biased, even discriminatory, flies in the face of our images of ourselves. It pains us to sit with our biases, so we resist examining them. And because we don't examine them, we don't uproot them, leaving us with attitudes and practices that don't reflect our values or our self-images.
Right. So I would think that that's a very good way to describe the TR as well. Like, I would think you don't understand your biases or like your delulus. And it's very hard, like, because for so much of the time I was in the issue, I didn't think I had one. You know, I was delusional about having it. And I think that happens a lot within bingo because there's just a lot of dissociation in bingo. Like, people do not understand that. Like, when they're talking, they're not totally lucid. You know, I know that's scary to say, but it's the truth. Like, you have to dissociate so much when you're doing that stuff, like, all the time. especially when it's severe. You have to always remember I'm thinking about it from a more severe perspective. But it's like you have to be really careful about that. Like I had to re-examine my relationship with politics, my relationship with religion and spirituality. I had to reevaluate how I approach romance, how I approach finance, how I approach work and life balance. I had to reevaluate even my career choice. I was trying primarily to be a writer before a YouTuber. And when I got out of the TR, I realized that they were swapped. And it was more so because I was scared to speak. And then I wasn't anymore, So I had to reevaluate everything. But for me, it was so foundational to my life. And it was such a huge part of my life that when I left it, it's like I had to leave everything behind and start over. And that's a lot of work. It's a lot. So, I mean, I think when Aubrey is saying this, she's obviously not being genuine, in my opinion. I think that she's trying to be manipulative. But I still think that you can look at her psychology being so deep in the issue of bingo. It's almost like she's trying to tell on herself in a way. Because it's like you want to just tell the truth for once sometimes when you're in bingo, Especially with her, it's just so deep. But she'll never uproot that. I don't think she ever will. Leaving us with attitudes and practices that don't reflect our values or our self-images. Oh my goodness. That is the TR in a nutshell. Gosh.
Bad judges of our own.
Especially when it's severe, it affects everything. It affects how you view the world. It affects how you view other people. She's very severe. Aubrey is super severe. So it's bad. Like she connects everything to fatness. She cannot separate anything from it at all.
Own biases. We may think of ourselves as egalitarian, clear-headed, justice-minded, compassionate, or we may think of ourselves as rational decision-makers who reliably treat other people with respect. To think of ourselves as biased, even discriminatory, flies in the face.
My expectation is we're going to get worse characters for a while. The industry is in a downturn, kind of like everything's in a downturn. They're going to go with stuff that's safe, and they don't think that making content with fat characters as protagonists is safe. Mm-hmm. And so they're probably not.
Okay, if you're talking about it maybe from a fat perspective, I haven't seen a lot of fat characters. And I've been seeing, you have to realize I'm really like a horror movie person. I've been seeing a lot of horror movies in theaters. Like I just saw the new one with like the Irish witch and all that. I can't remember what it's called, but I just saw it. It was good. I really loved it. But it was like, I feel like there's some horror movies that are just kind of corny. There's some horror movies that are just kind of gross. Like I saw The Mummy and that one was just kind of gross, to be honest. It was kind of perfect for my anhedonia, but it was very gross. And I'm like, when you have anhedonia sometimes, at least when I do, it's like I get really disgusted. So it made me feel something that day. So I was glad I saw it. But I didn't feel as bad yesterday when I saw the new horror movie that just came out. And then there's like your slashers, and then there's different vibes of horror movie. There's a lot of really bad ones too. But I don't know if I see a lot of like fatness in horror movies. Like I did see, I'm not trying to call anyone out or be mean or anything, but I did see Ma. I thought Ma was a good movie, to be honest. I saw that one somewhat recently. I thought it was good. I liked it. And she's a fat main character. So That was a good one. I liked it. I don't know if I can think of anything else. Like, I guess you guys can let me know if you can think of a fat horror movie, but uh, anyways.
I'm gonna do it. The spaces that were opened up for people in rooms are gonna
That's something I
close.
kind of like about horror too, is like it's usually not as identity based. It's like, and it can happen to anybody, you know? It's kind of like an equalizer. Not always. Like I just saw there's going to be this new one by this like Australian director where it's like it's called like Leviticus or something, and it's literally like a gay horror movie. It's like the horror is that they're like it's like they're gay and they're religiously judged, and one of them is like a demonic thing. Like I don't know. It looks kind of crazy. I probably will end up watching it, but some of the Australian horror movies I've seen, they are more identity focused like that. Um, but I don't know. Australian cinema is it's something else because like the Babadook was a trip too, you know. Um, but anyways, I watch a lot of horror movies. Like I'm getting into my cringe, my introvert cringe right now. But I like to watch them from different countries too because you can see like how different countries like edit like the style of it and stuff. Which like for example, I've watched some Britishy ones and the editing is so much slower than like American cinema, and I've fallen asleep or I've like almost fallen asleep a couple times. But I watched French, I watched Spanish. I like Spanish horror. I've usually liked the Spanish horror movies a lot. I think, like I said, the one I just watched, I think it was like an American slash Irish one. I watch a lot of Asian horror. I watch, you know, it's just all interesting. Sometimes the Asian horror, it can be really hit or miss. There's some that are really good, and then there's some that are really bad. So you have to be kind of like, okay, you know, with that. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting, like, especially when I've watched so many, like, I've literally watched so many over the past few years that it's like, I think if I don't know, I kind of would want to write a horror story or something if I did it because I feel like I know genre expectations now and everything because I've watched so many. But I always felt like it was too hard for me to do. I don't know. I'm just going on a rant. I need to stop. Anyways, I like that horror movies in general are like a great equalizer. You know, like I watched Fear Street on Netflix and I enjoyed them. And the main character was a lesbian. And it wasn't like, it was a part of it, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I enjoyed it. I don't know. I like that about horror. It's like, it can be anybody. Okay. That's what I love about it. It's equal opportunity, you know?
Because there's just not enough things being funded essentially. But in addition to that, I think that like we have seen like some really good examples of characters that have been true protagonists, true characters. As we get more of that, right, as we get less um The Biggest Loser and more Bridgerton, however you feel about it, people see fat people. It's almost like they have this like allergic reaction where they the first time they see like a fat person who isn't miserable, they're just like, somebody needs to do something. Stop this right now. But like as they see it like more and more and more, it's just like this is just normal, man.
I know, but like, how many movies do you watch where even the thin characters are not miserable? Like, it seems like everybody's miserable. But then again, I do watch a lot of horror, but it's like there's usually some kind of conflict. Even if it's just drama, there's a conflict, you know? I don't know.
And it's fine. Then they kind of either like spiral and become like an absolute internet weirdo, or they just get over it. And that like the more that we can see people in like normal roles, the more it does normalize it, that like, hey, fat people are just around and it's fine, you don't got to worry about it.
I don't think anything that I've laid out here is really that unreasonable or that difficult to do, honestly. I mean, come on, it must be so much easier just to hire fat people than to make yet another unflattering fat suit, right?
Not in every case, no. I don't think it has been totally reasonable, to be honest. I don't.
Even if it does take a little bit more work and effort than to cast some A-list actor and then make them eat cream cheese for every meal, it is worth the effort. Fat people deserve characters that they can relate to, that they can see themselves in, that they want to laugh with and cry.
They want to reinforce fatness as an identity. No. I say no to that. I say absolutely not.
With and share in their victories, just as
I wouldn't really want somebody identifying with or pushing like a narrative of underweight either. I wouldn't want somebody identifying with that either, unless if it's a central part of the story, which yes, sometimes it can be, just as the same thing with the fat person. It can be too, you know.
As much as any other group. And if you truly, still now, disagree with everything that I said, then ask yourself,
not everything.
Why is it important for you to uphold decades-old tropes about fat people? Why do you need fat people to be one-dimensional caricatures of themselves in order for you to be comfortable? What privileges are you afraid of losing?
When what we see in the media contributes to collective understandings of our bodies, investigating fat phobia on screen feels necessary for pushing back on ideas of what is normal, especially because so many films and TV shows still employ tropes that uphold and are upheld by societal anti-fatness.
Class dismissed.
Obsessed. They are so obsessed with media. Okay, so that's basically it. I will say that this was a fun react. This was fun to talk about. It was fun to think about. Like I said, I'm not really that great with actors and all that stuff at all in Hollywood and stuff. I struggle with that. So that was a little hard for me. But other than that, I had fun reacting to this one. It was a little bit lighter than the typical topics. And I still think that there were some things that I could show you in what they were saying. So I appreciate that. Also, too, like I said, it's given me a little bit of an itch to write, which I don't know if that's going to happen. But if history states, it probably will not. But it is something I've thought about recently, I think because I've been reacting to this. But I do admire writers. I admire it if somebody can write well. It's very difficult for me. I don't know. It is. But anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, night, etc. And I will see you guys next week. I will see members later. Have a good one. Bye.